This is India's #1 news network, and you're watching News 9, English news as it should be.
Our first segment on In Your Interest, a ceasefire that was meant to essentially calm the West Asian region that's already now under fire, the fragility that's been exposed. Lebanon continues to burn as missiles fly and the fault lines widen. Was this peace deal even ever real? And was this just a pause before a bigger war? Let's decode all of that. A diplomatic breakthrough that the world hoped would bring peace has instead triggered a fresh wave of violence. A major ceasefire was announced between Iran and US and Israel, brokered by Pakistan. It was supposed to be a 2-week window to cool down a region that was on the brink of total war. And the deal is now in tatters. Hours after the announcement, Israel launched its most devastating air campaign against Lebanon since March. Over 100 targets across Beirut, the south, and the Bekaa Valley that were hit in less than 10 minutes. And the scale of the destruction is massive as well. Pictures will speak for themselves, with early reports suggesting between 180 to 250 people that have been killed and over thousands other that have been injured. Those displaced, the numbers even higher. Hospitals in Lebanon are already reporting that they're overwhelmed. Those emergency kits, they're running out of those. Hezbollah paused its rocket fire for a short time, but then resumed, saying Israel had violated that ceasefire. Now the truce, it appears extremely fragile, and there are growing fears that the conflict could spread on further. Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif said that the violations in Lebanon undermine the spirit of the ceasefire, but Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has made it clear that the ceasefire does not include Lebanon and that strikes on Hezbollah will continue. US President Donald Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance have also stated that Lebanon was never part of the agreement. It's a separate skirmish, quote unquote. On the other side, Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian said that the strikes violate the ceasefire and will invite a strong response. The confusion, it started right from the announcement on the 8th of April. Pakistan's statement appeared to include Lebanon in the ceasefire, but the United States and Israel quickly said Lebanon was excluded. Analysts say Pakistan may have conveyed different versions of the deal to Washington and Tehran, leading to mismatched expectations. So, is the Lebanon conundrum due to Pakistan's confusion? Many are calling the agreement rushed with unclear terms and weak enforcement. There are also questions about how the announcement was handled. Prime Minister of Pakistan and his post on X briefly showed the word draft. That's right, and was written in third-person style. Reports suggest that United States may have directed the wording of that post, whilst the Financial Times says the US led the ceasefire effort and used Pakistan only as a go-between to reach Iran. Israel has openly distanced itself from Pakistan's mediation role. They say it's not credible. An Israeli envoy to India signaled that Pakistan is not seen as a credible mediator. At the same time, Iran has now linked any further talks to an immediate halt of Israeli strikes on Lebanon. In just one day, this new ceasefire has exposed key gaps, deep cracks, and it has shown a trust deficit between the parties and raised doubts about whether mediation through Pakistan can actually help reduce tensions at all. Did Pakistan's mediation actually help, or has it made the situation more confusing? More than 250 people dead in Lebanon. Why did Israel strike Lebanon so heavily just hours after the announcement? And with Iran now conditioning further talks on the ceasefire of strikes in Lebanon, has this failed mediation effort by Pakistan actually made a direct Israel-Iran confrontation more likely? With us on the broadcast, Ambassador Suresh K. Goyal, former Indian diplomat. Many thanks, Ambassador, for taking out the time. We earlier spoke to you before the ceasefire. Now the ceasefire has happened, and look at the fragility and the key gaps in it. Rear Admiral Girish Kumar Garg, defense and strategy expert. Many thanks, Admiral, for taking out the time. And Surinder Singh Lalli, foreign affairs and geopolitical expert. Always a pleasure to have you with us, Mr. Lalli. Ambassador, why was Lebanon excluded from the ceasefire plan? What confusion did Pakistan now play? And this barbaric act, I mean, on the pretext of killing one Hezbollah operative, you've gone on and bombed an entire residential and commercial complex. So the fragility, the key gaps, and were we already expecting something like this? A very, very fragile ceasefire. It didn't even hold more than 25 hours.
Good evening, Kabir. And now, important questions and probably no definite answers. One can only give an assessment. I do hope that what I say sounds like an educated assessment, even if not convincing altogether. Number one, I'm quite convinced that both Iran and the USA are interested in stopping the conflict, war, aggression against each other, but the fighting going on. They are interested simply because neither the USA nor the Iran are benefiting any more from it than ever really. For USA, the domestic situation is more important. NATO, Europe are proving to be more intractable issues than they will have to, than they ever thought, and they need to deal with them. I don't think Trump will be able to really focus his attention on Iran, Middle East, Gulf for far too long a time. But he needs an off-ramp. But the problem is, where do you go? Iran at the same time, Iran has done valiantly, they fought very bravely, they held their ground and all that. But eventually there is a limit. And I think slowly they are realizing that they may not be able to hold on to a state of Hormuz and the positions they have, the kind of the energy infrastructure they have. They may not be able to hold on to all that for a very long time. So they need to stop also. The problem really here is, I've said it, this is nothing new. So therefore, they both want to stop. There are stories that in the case of Lebanon, there was a misrepresentation. It has not been proved by anyone at all. Whether Pakistan actually indeed played a dirty game or not, it's a speculation. They may have, they may not have. But the point is, where was there a misunderstanding? To my knowledge, there was no misunderstanding between USA and Iran. They have been saying it for a long time that ceasefire has to be between Iran and the USA, and the attacks against all the other supporters of Iran, obviously meaning Hezbollah, must stop. Israel was never prepared to stop. So the issue really here is whether Trump will be able to persuade Israel to stop Lebanon because of the USA's own domestic constraints. USA has to. USA cannot remain engaged for a very long time. Then can Israel continue like they continued in Gaza? I think Lebanon will be a very different case altogether. So my expectation is that Israel will have to listen to USA sometime or the other, and therefore it's a matter of some time before it stops. It is becoming unsustainable.
Ambassador, is that going to be even possible? Tucker Carlson in his latest podcast says it's not just influence, it's infiltration at the hands of the Israeli intelligence officers. They're not working from Tel Aviv, they're working from Pentagon. And well, of course, I mean, that's Tucker Carlson. And his supporters want him to run for presidency as well. That's a completely different topic. Admiral Garg, let me come to you very quickly. Is this escalation that we're seeing in Beirut? Look at some of those pictures. I mean, barbaric. The entire world is now, condemning these strikes. Is this escalation by design? Is this by accident? 100 strikes in 10 minutes, over 250 killed. What does this tell us about Israel's objectives? Is it deterrence? Is it degradation? Is it domination? When Donald Trump says this is a separate skirmish, is it really a separate skirmish? Because even as the conflict began in February, south of the Litani River, Israel had begun its forces and its deployment over there.
I think the attack at this scale cannot be by accident. Certainly, it cannot be by accident. It is well planned and thought out strategy by Israel. What does it reflect? To me, it reflects Israel's frustration at this ceasefire, which I am very sure Israel was never in favor. They would have agreed to this 2-week truce under U.S. pressure. Certainly, Israel would not have been very happy with this 2-week of ceasefire. And this attack on Lebanon is, in my opinion, a way of Israel's expression of frustration at this ceasefire, which has been brokered at the insistence of US and mediated by Pakistan. So, certainly the scale and the devastation that has been created by this attack by Israel, it speaks that, they are conveying a message to the world that they are unhappy with this ceasefire. And they would certainly like to see this ceasefire being
well, if they're unhappy with the
jeopardized.
ceasefire, why should commoners and lay people, face the brunt of that? Why should they face the music? I mean, on the pretext of, let's say there are 10 Hezbollah operatives in that particular area. Look at the amount of charred bodies and the charred cars that the authorities have had to pull out. I mean, what will it take? Does this not amount to war crimes? I mean, help the viewers understand that, sir.
Absolutely. Whenever a scale of attack of this scale takes place, there is tremendous collateral. Whilst Israel will justify that these Hezbollah operatives are intermixed with the civilian population, it's very difficult to separate a terrorist from a common man, and they take shield behind all that. That's the common pretext that we have seen over the years. Justify attack on civil targets, whether it's Gaza or whether it is Syria, or wherever we see. This is a common pretext that is used to target civil infrastructure. But yes, certainly it's a war crime to attack civilian targets. But then, in today's wars that we see, whether it's US or it's Israel, ethics and morality and regard for international law and human life is always put aside, and the world has become ruthless and unfortunate. That's very, very unfortunate. But that's the way the world wars are being fought at total disregard to civilian casualties. That's unfortunate.
Well, proportional force or excessive force, we'll let the viewers decide that. Ms. Lally, I'm interested in what your assessment in reading about all of this is. The ambassador says, will Donald Trump be able to rein in a Netanyahu? Remember, last time around in that 12-day war last year, Donald Trump spoke to the press on the lawns of the White House, and he said, these two nations have been fighting for so long, they don't know what the F they're doing. They don't know what the beep they're doing. And this is the same president who's now come out and saying that that's a separate skirmish. So how do we look at that? What are some of the options that United States now has? Of course, there is the aspect of resuming to fight. Pete Hegseth says the joint forces are ready. On the other hand, you can rein in a Netanyahu, or you can also trust J.D. Vance to do his job, give dialogue and diplomacy a chance come Saturday when Islamabad Accords takes its first shape. So war crimes using the F word, wiping out the entire civilization, we've seen some of those quote-unquote truths. What are some of the options, and what can Americans now do?
Use it before you lose it. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Benjamin Netanyahu for you. This war was started by Benjamin Netanyahu, where Marco Rubio was on record saying, and I quote him, Israel was going to initiate this war and Iran would have attacked our assets, hence we have to go in for this war, quote close. Now allow me to share with you that Benjamin Netanyahu for 40 years has been trying to convince American presidents one after the other. I mean, there is enough evidence, including, John Kerry, another Secretary of the State, saying that every time any president came into power, it was a dream come true for Benjamin Netanyahu to use the might of American military to attack the Iran. Now, why? APAC, American Israel Public Affairs Committee, makes huge donations. The likes of Mark Levin, who actually put hand on Donald Trump's shoulder in a press conference and say that he's almost a Jew, if not a complete Jew. Lindsey Graham, who was instrumental in accompanying, Benjamin Netanyahu on his 7 to 8 trips in the first 9 months to the United States while playing golf, convincing Donald Trump that we have to do it. And Mossad made a case where Benjamin Netanyahu was in the war room, where normally you don't allow other
Yeah,
head of states
the
to go.
situation room, Mr. Lali, the situation room, where
The
foreign
situation
dignitaries are not
room.
allowed there.
So while I'm saying all of this, I have to say in the same breath, Epstein files has played a very big role, both in Donald Trump trying to divert attention from the Americans and to a lot of what is lying inside those files. Because Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein, Robert Maxwell, they were all on the Mossad/CIA rolls. I mean, when Robert Maxwell died in England, I mean, he was found in mysterious circumstances, and at his funeral, 6 past head of the states of Israel showed up and said in a very cryptic way that he was one of the biggest assets to the state of Israel. That having said that, number 2, I mean, this is a war of choice. Please understand, what does Steve Witkoff or Jared Kushner know about the Middle East? Steve Witkoff is a businessman making malls in New Jersey, and Jared's only claim to fame is that he's Donald Trump's son-in-law. What do they understand of this kind of intense conflict in the Middle East, which is such a divided house? And, even Iran was on record saying that twice in the middle of our, negotiations,
I think that's precisely why J.D. Vance had to be brought in.
Yeah.
They said, Steve Witkoff, you're not going to
now-
be carrying out the talks. It's going to be J.D. Vance now.
Yeah, because Kabir, these are very subterranean issues. I mean, Donald Trump has a bunch of sycophants, the Pam Bondis, and look at them. What do they understand? The podcast.
All right.
They are only there because they are simply sycophants and they don't understand the complexities to what is going on in the Middle East.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is that Benjamin Netanyahu is trying to do everything under his, till the time he can use and abuse the might of the American might to settle his 40-year-old dream. Kabir.
Okay. Ambassador, what do you make of that? If I could put the Gulf scorecard on your desk and ask you to rate it, what's happening here? Do you think the Iranians have won and America was purely absorbing all of those attacks? And then Donald Trump, has he got what he set out to get? Netanyahu stands exposed. There's a big question mark on that. And what one thing is for certain, the entire Gulf has been left absolutely vulnerable. So what's your Gulf scorecard 41 days into this conflict, sir? Ambassador, you'll have to unmute yourself. My apologies.
As I said,
Yeah.
As far as who has won and who has lost this war, in the game of chess, the only winner is the one who actually captures the king of the other side. That has not happened as yet.
Fair enough.
Therefore, I will not even go into the question of who has won, who has lost, or who will win and who will lose. The issue really here is, can they afford anymore at a political or strategic level? I'm not even talking materially. Can Trump take more strategic losses domestically and internationally? Europe, NATO is fragmented. Why? NATO didn't get fragmented because of Ukraine. It happened when Gulf came up. Europe is showing the signs of dissonance because of Gulf. Gulf is getting fragmented. The entire Gulf security structure is getting destroyed.
Yeah.
Now, even Trump, and I'm not talking about Witkoff, and incidentally, I do believe that Kushner offered a joint venture with Iran. I really wonder whether he had been drinking the previous night. But that apart, this is the kind of team that Trump has. But the point really here is, the only issue in terms between peace and war, and I'm putting in very stark terms, the only issue between peace and war is Israeli ambitions in West Asia. Will USA be able to rein in Israeli ambitions?
Yeah.
Maybe the capacity is limited. But given the political quagmire that Trump now faces, does Trump have any options? I don't think he has. And as a businessman, even if he's not a diplomat, even if he's not a statesman, as a businessman, he knows that he cannot lose this deal anymore.
Yeah, yeah. Pete
So
Hegseth
that is
says
where
the US president is one of the biggest deal makers. There's nobody better at making deals than the United States presidents. I just want to know what the entire administration is on at this point in time. Admiral, like the ambassador says, reigning in Israel is going to be a major and very important factor. If the US chooses to reign in Israel, like they did last time around in that 12-day war, is that even realistically possible given the ground dynamics that we've been seeing? And I'm again saying, look at the visuals on the television screens. They speak for themselves. Look at the amount of devastation in Lebanon. Open-handedly, they've unilaterally announced to the world that everything south of the Litani River is going to be an Israeli buffer zone. We need it. We need it in Syria. Gaza is already done and dusted, and now it's Lebanon's turn, at least the south of it.
I think reigning in Israel for the United States will really challenging, for the simple reason that Israel views Lebanon and all these areas as existential threats to the very existence of Israel as a state. And as long as Israel is convinced that any form of Hezbollah or any form of Lebanon state presents an existential threat to Israel, I think it will be very difficult for United States or Pakistan or anybody to convince Israel to stop attacks, because from an Israeli perspective, any ceasefire gives a chance to Hezbollah to rearm, to regroup, and attack with double the ferocity, which Israel would never like to do, and they would like to see Hezbollah completely wiped out. And this truce, 2 week or 3 week or whatever it lasts, is not in Israel's interest. So, certainly, to tell Israel that we assure you that, your existence will not be harmed or challenged by this truce. I don't think Israel will be very easy to buy that part. And you've seen what has happened in the last 24 hours.
Yeah.
It's a clear signal that it's not easy to convince Israel and the Israeli people because they are also party to this, what the government is doing.
This is turning out to be a multi-pronged war yet again, even as the fragile ceasefire, it's still in place. We don't know how long it's going to hold. So, Mr. Lalli, let me ask you a multi-pronged question. Okay. Number one, is Mojtaba Khamenei likely to be in some sort of hardliner pressure internally from the IRGC now that this ceasefire lapse has happened? Then you've got the United States. Is the US underestimating this resistance of access that has come to light? Hezbollah, the party of the god, like the name translates. And finally, why is this deal, this truce deal, why is it being called as a trap by the analysts and the experts? We know that the Brent and the WTI have gone below the $100 mark, but for how long? And this entire ceasefire was supposed to give the energy stability a chance. That's not going to happen anytime soon. Pezeshkian has already claimed that only 15 vessels a day, that's the limit on the passage through the Strait of Hormuz. So there is going to be no more lubrication in the system. So Mojtaba Khamenei, is he under some sort of pressure? Is the US underestimating the axis of resistance? And why is this deal being called a trap?
Well, maybe Kabir, you know more than I do, but I'm not too sure in what condition Mojtaba Khamenei is. Some say, he's not there anymore. Some say he's in Russia. So we don't know, because as if now he has not made a single live, on a video or any kind of a statement. It is only being voiced and some photographs are being played. Having said that, you said something very beautiful. What's the scorecard? So allow me to present the scorecard on the 41st day of Operation Epic Fury. Iran, more undeterred. China, more powerful. Russia, more richer. GCC and NATO, under the bus, militarily very weak. NATO, ineffective. United States, isolated, and the world in a very big mess. So this is what we've gotten to after the 41st day, but knowing the mercurial American president, I think if you ask me, I'm going to exceed my pay grade and say, I think this is a failure of CIA and Mossad too. I mean, so much so they couldn't, stop the egregious October 7th attack. And even now they were totally caught off the guard in understanding the might of Iran. I mean, look at what America has gotten themselves into despite what Pete Hegseth, who talks like a college fraternity boy and bags about war crimes, not realizing that they might be tried like the Nuremberg trials and they could all be behind bars if Democrats had a spine. But having said that, the situation, Kabir, is extremely fluid, and we don't know what we will wake up to tomorrow morning.
Yeah, well, I think you're right on that particular point. Ambassador, the final word to you. Does this entire fiasco, the fluid situation, and like Mr. Lally said, we don't know what we're going to be waking up to, what we have in store for us, what the Gulf has in store for us come tomorrow morning. Does this weaken Pakistan's standing as a serious diplomatic intermediary? Yesterday, there were various opinion pieces that talking about how Pakistan is able to punch above its weight, but clearly that copy-paste, they can't get that copy-paste right, on X. Ms. Lally, I'll come to you. Let the ambassador answer this one.
No, Kabir, yeah. I would really appreciate let Mr. Lally finish what he was saying.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Lally. Thank you, Ambassador.
I'm totally honored. The only word I have to say for Pakistan is it's a useful idiot who just happens to be at the right place at the right time. So it's so ironical that a country which is absolutely tearing at the seams, unstable, fleeced America of $32 billion, and the Bin Laden was found there, and now you expect the head of the state or somebody from the Israeli government to land on Pakistani soil? Either I'm missing the point, or either somebody who chose Pakistan as a destination
the newsroom corridor and the newsroom grapevine has it that Islamabad is on a lockdown because the Islamabad Accord is supposed to take place.
Schools are closed. Military town it is.
We'll wrap this up. We'll wrap this up. Ambassador, do you concur with that? The Munir doctrine is nothing but a useful idiot.
Let me put it this way. Whatever we may like to think of it, every time we think Pakistan is way down in the dumps, they have a habit of jumping up again. And they have a habit of coming up again. Therefore, first of all, I would say that we should stop taking Pakistan lightly. Pakistan has a capacity to be a nuisance, create a problem for us whenever there is anything at all. So we should not ignore it completely, number one. Number two, what reminds me is that just before the ceasefire came, even if rather shaky, there was a threat of the nuclear detonations, nuclear war, because Trump had said the civilization will come to an end. I hope that threat has passed. Rest will be taken care of with some time and some patience.
All right. So certainly this isn't a ceasefire, gentlemen. It's a selective de-escalation at its best. And I think we'll have to wait and find out. It's still early doors. On that note, gentlemen, always a pleasure to have you with us. Ambassador, Admiral, Mr. Lally, many thanks for taking on the time. The guns may have paused, but the distrust is louder than ever. And the next move, and we don't know what that's going to be, is going to decide the entire region's fate. In West Asia, ceasefires, they don't end wars. We've seen it time and again. They simply reset the battlefield. And what will this reset give? Well, we'll have to wait and find out. A quick commercial breather. Our second segment on In Your Interest, right on the other side. Don't go anywhere.